नजर आ रहे हैं। आज टीम इंडिया पर संकट के बादल साफ मंडराते हार्दिक पांड्या मौजूद है।
नहीं देगी क्योंकि इंग्लिश टीम इस वर्ल्ड कप में काफ़ी उम्दा परफॉर्मेंस दिखा रही है और इंग्लिश टीम को बीट करना काफ़ी दिक्कत होगी यूएसए की टीम के लिए। तो बहरहाल दोस्तों, अगर हम यूएसए के की प्लेयर्स की बात करें आज के मैच में, तो आज के मैच में टॉप ऑर्डर में स्टीवन टेलर आज के मैच में की प्लेयर हो सकते हैं, इनको जल्दी आउट करना पड़ेगा। मिडल ऑर्डर काफ़ी तगड़ा नज़र आ रहा है। एरन जोन्स, कोरी एंडरसन काफ़ी अच्छे बैटर हैं। नीतीश कुमार अच्छी बल्लेबाजी कर लेते हैं। तो इंग्लिश टीम के खिलाफ यूएसए की टीम काफ़ी अच्छी दिखाई दे रही है। देखते कि आज का मुकाबला अच्छी बल्लेबाजी करता हुआ दिखाई देता है। इंग्लिश टीम के खिलाफ दोनों टीमें काफ़ी मजबूत हैं, काफ़ी अच्छी दिखाई दे रही है। दोनों टीमों के पास आज का मुकाबला बल्लेबाजी करता हुआ दिखाई दे रहा है। इंग्लिश टीम के खिलाफ दोनों टीमें काफ़ी अच्छी दिखाई दे रही है। दोनों टीमों के पास आज का मुकाबला बल्लेबाजी करता हुआ मैच साउथ अफ्रीका वाले मैच में इंग्लिश टीम काफ़ी अच्छी रन से शिकस्त का सामना करना पड़ा था, लेकिन इंग्लिश टीम ऐसी टीम है जो आपको बिल्कुल डोमिनेट कर सकती है यहाँ पर, और इंग्लिश टीम इस वर्ल्ड कप को जीतने की फेवरेट कही जा रही है। हालांकि एक वक्त था, एक मौका था इंग्लिश टीम इस वर्ल्ड कप में ग्रुप स्टेज मरहले से आगे आने के लिए इंग्लिश टीम दोस्तों काफ़ी लाले पड़े हुए थे, लेकिन अब इंग्लिश टीम इस वर्ल्ड कप में अच्छी फॉर्म में आ चुकी है। अच्छे बल्लेबाज इंग्लिश टीम के पास मौजूद है, गेंदबाजी इंग्लिश टीम की काफ़ी बढ़िया नज़र आ रही है। तो इंग्लिश टीम मैं समझता हूँ काफ़ी फेवरेट नज़र आ रही है। अगर इंग्लिश टीम आज ही वर्ल्ड कप के सेमीफाइनल के लिए क्वालिफाई कर जाए तो आने वाले मैचेस में दीगर टीमों के लिए बड़ी ख़तरे की घंटी बजा सकती है। इंग्लिश टीम काफ़ी मजबूत किस्म का बैटिंग लाइनअप इंग्लिश टीम का नज़र आ रहा है। बल्लेबाजी कमाल की है, बैटिंग लाइनअप बढ़िया है, बॉलिंग कमाल की है इनके पास। टॉप ऑर्डर में फिल सॉल्ट बड़े ख़तरनाक बैटर हैं। फिल सॉल्ट का बल्ला अगर आज के मैच में चल गया तो ये बड़े ख़तरनाक हो सकते हैं। इसके अलावा लियाम लिविंगस्टन, हैरी ब्रूक पिछले मैच में अच्छे रन्स करके आ रहे हैं, तो आज के मैच में इनका रोल दोस्तों काफ़ी क्रूशल होने जा रहा है। देखते हैं कि आज यूएसए के खिलाफ इंग्लिश टीम कैसी बॉलिंग करती है। मार्क वुड, जोफ्रा आर्चर इस वर्ल्ड कप में बढ़िया परफॉर्मेंस दिखाते हुए आ रहे हैं। देखते हैं कि मार्क
There were full stadiums there, but around most of the tournament, there weren't full stadiums. The fans didn't get to enjoy it as much as they normally would. Then you've got the World Cup in Qatar, where I thought other sets of supporters from other parts of the world came to the fore, the Saudi Arabia fans, Morocco fans, but European football fans didn't travel in huge numbers for a number of different reasons. I remember being at a Belgium game, a France game, and thinking, wow, the atmosphere isn't very good at all in these stadiums when the European teams are playing. But this tournament has felt like it's the time when the European football fans have decided it's time to party again. The Scotland fans taking over Munich, the Dutch fans parading around before their matches. Here in Frankfurt, yesterday on Sports World, I was next to the fan zone. It was like Turkey were playing in Frankfurt, not in Dortmund where their game was taking place. So yeah, it's been a sensational atmosphere, and the European football fans have been enjoying tournament football again, and it's been great to see. And for the most part as well, Delith, it's been very friendly as well in the cities around Germany.
I think that was the vibe I got through being in Berlin in that build up to the opening weekend last weekend and throughout that weekend. And Konstantin, you'll know as well, there was so many Spaniards and Croats, of course, in the capital, wasn't there, last weekend, because that was the opening match in Berlin. But John, you're right in saying that the Scotland fans, I think, have lightened up the tournament. Do you concur, Konstantin, that this very much has felt like the supporters have been a huge part of this tournament?
Yeah, and of course, every supporter or each supporter group kind of write their own story in a sense. You saw the Dutch taking over Hamburg. I mean, geographically, it was an advantageous position for them because it's not far from the Dutch-German border. The same goes for Polish fans traveling to Berlin. It's only 60 miles from Berlin to the German-Polish border. So I think the Euros are meant to be a tournament where actually fans can come together, and it might actually create a bit of a different atmosphere. Drive might actually get you to at least the city where your team will be playing. Speaking of train rides, I think the only downside so far with this tournament is public transportation, because that hasn't really worked well. I think the Deutsche Bahn, the German train company, are not really advertising themselves right now, in a good way at least. And also sometimes stadium entrances. I even saw it, some people or some of my colleagues entering stadiums. It took a while sometimes, and it wasn't really comfortably.
Yeah, more than ever during this tournament, I've had an insight into how difficult it is for fans sometimes to follow their teams. I mean, Konstantin mentioned there geographically, for some fans it's easier than others where it's just over the border. But some of the things these fans have to do to get to the cities, get to the games, get accommodation, how much it costs. I think sometimes we forget that when we're watching back on TV, and I think sometimes the football authorities forget it as well, and they don't make it easy, whether it's the organisers with travel or whether it's the organisers of the tournament, for these fans sometimes to support their teams, and they're not always treated in the best way. So I think we should never forget how difficult it is for fans to get to these tournaments, and how much they light up the tournament as well. It would be nothing, this spectacle, without those supporters, as we saw 3 years ago at the last Euros.
Is that the one thing that may be the negative of this tournament then? Because so far, I think I'm right in saying it seems to have been trouble-free, particularly in terms of the supporters and other stuff happening. But like, you know, you both there touched on the trains, and arguably I think Gelsenkirchen, maybe more than any other venue, has had issues, hasn't it? Particularly after the matches there have finished, with supporters trying to get out of the city and getting elsewhere. Konstantin, would I be fair in saying that that's perhaps the one downside of this tournament so far?
Yeah, I think public transportation as a whole, and it was in a way expected, actually. There were some warning signs beforehand. Just, you know, actually I have on some of the BBC programs have been telling fans or told fans that keep an eye out, you know, maybe factor in that some of these trains might arrive 2 hours late or something like that, or it might be hard to actually get on a train when there's just overcrowding going on. In terms of regarding Gelsenkirchen, there's also, I think, a few mishaps by the organizers. I mean, we can all be positive and everything, but a few mishaps by the organizers, because Schalke, who are playing who's the Gelsenkirchen club, right? It's just Schalke is just the name of a part of Gelsenkirchen. That's why it might be a bit confusing, but they are playing in Veltins Arena usually. They have a special contract with one of the public transportation transportation companies. And the Euro's organizers, or whoever is actually in charge then, they didn't sign a contract with them. So, I mean, sometimes you have to learn from these clubs because they have been doing this for many years or decades.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So in terms of the tournament itself then, John, if we're talking the football, do you think it's met or perhaps even exceeded expectations so far?
I think it has exceeded expectations in terms of the spectacle, in terms of the entertainment. Konstantin might be able to help me out here because I know he's very good on his tactics. I'm not a tactical expert, but I'm going to put forward a theory. I'm going to put forward a theory here, Konstantin. You see if you agree with me. I think in the past few years, Pep Guardiola has had such a massive impact on football. And we've had lots of Pep Guardiola clones. And sometimes it hasn't been great for the spectacle of football in terms of when it's done great, the Pep Guardiola style, as he does with Manchester City, it's fantastic to watch. But when it's not done so well, sometimes it's a bit slow, it's a bit pensive. It seems that the football style here at the Euros has been attacking. It hasn't been slow at all. It's been fast. It's been exciting. It's been quite direct in some cases. It's been end-to-end. And most of the games, apart from the games I've been at, because you may have heard yesterday, Delith, that I've jinxed a lot of the games I've been at, and I've only seen 2 goals and both are own goals. So apart from the games I've been at, Konstantin, we've seen some really entertaining football, haven't we, so far at the tournament?
I think there are 2 points to be made. First of all, I don't really think a national team can actually copy Pep Guardiola's style, just that heavily possession-based style, because it takes you days, weeks, months actually to train your team to play that Manchester City or maybe previously FC Barcelona style. And of course, national head coaches know, all right, that's almost impossible to do because we have only a couple of weeks and the squad is changing always. You know, some players are dropping out. I have to pick up new ones because they've been so strong playing for their club. So it's really hard. And another point I would like to make is that I think a lot of teams, they have great attacking talent at this tournament, and you can see it, be it Spain, be it France, be it even some of the smaller nations like Georgia, for instance. But on the other hand, a couple of nations are actually struggling to create defensive stability. I think the Netherlands, for instance, although they played quite well against France, you can see how these teams are struggling to just shut down their back line and actually shut down the midfield. I also think Belgium yesterday, although they won against Romania, it was quite easy for Romania to approach or advance to Belgium's penalty area, which I mean, just keep it in mind moving forward. I think Domenico Tedesco will have something to think about and maybe to reconfigure. But yeah, overall, I think just teams are a bit more top heavy in a sense.
We'll be hearing from him a little bit later as well, Tedesco. John, have your predictions changed from a week ago when we spoke? You know, when the tournament was just underway, in terms of who we can expect to win this title, this trophy.
I'm going to stick with the team that I'm going to be watching today, Germany. Konstantin's going to be happy with me, or maybe not happy, because I might be the jinx. I might ruin Germany's chances by predicting that they would win. But that's who I thought would win. And they haven't maybe had the biggest test so far, but I think they've passed every test with flying colours. Scotland, we know, were really poor in the first game when Germany thrashed them 5-1. Hungary, I thought, at times gave Julian Nagelsmann's side a test in the second game, but it became comfortable for Germany in the second half. But they've really impressed me. Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala have been 2 of the players of the tournament so far. The one team I wish I'd talked about more, and I can't believe I didn't, and I think we'll probably talk about them later in the hour, Spain. I've been so impressed by Spain so far in this tournament. Particularly, Konstantin mentioned attacking players, the 2 wingers, Williams and Lamine Yamal. Wow, they are sensational. And they do play a possession-based game, but those 2 wingers are so direct. They're old-fashioned wingers, and it's such a balanced team. I know we're going to talk about England as well, who don't look balanced at all, but Spain look balanced in all areas of the pitch. So I'm going to stick with Germany, but I wish I'd talk more about Spain because they look superb so far.
You are right. We will chat more about Spain shortly, and we'll also preview Switzerland, Germany in depth as well. Konstantin, I'll ask you a similar question that I asked John, really. You know, we spoke, didn't we, so much in depth last week about how France and England were perhaps the two main favourites. Have you seen enough from them perhaps to back up their case, or are you going with Germany? Have you changed your view on who could win this title? Are you looking at Spain like John?
Don't criticise England too much, Konstantin. Be kind, please.
All right, then I will refrain from making any statements about England right now. My pick going into this tournament was France, because I just think they are kind of the Real Madrid of international football. I think I've made a statement last week when we talked, Nelov, that just it might not be pretty sometimes when they win tournaments, or at least get to finals. Even like, remember their most recent World Cup campaign in Qatar, they didn't win it, but they got to the final. And let's be honest, it wasn't really the prettiest campaign by France, but they can be quite effective just based on talents they have. Some questionable decisions being made by Didier Deschamps. I think we have to talk about Rabiot always being in the starting 11. I don't really get that. Anyway, of course, if Mbappe is back, then that will be a great help. Of course, to France. And other than that, I also think Spain. They have played tremendously during these first two games. And what I think is the most important aspect, actually, concerning Spain's chances to win the tournament is that, yes, they have great attacking talent. And they might struggle a little bit in terms of Morata being not the best goal scorer, just a good target player, but not really a good goal scorer. But what they actually did very well against Italy was just any glimpse of Italy trying to create a counterattack was just denied by Rodri or Fabian Ruiz. So that was actually, in terms of defensive performance, that was tremendous by Spain. So I think, and that's what you need actually then, especially going into quarterfinals and semifinals.
Yeah, Spain impressing everyone. And like Konstantin, I still don't think we should write off France, despite, that they've had a mediocre start to the tournament. They've only scored one goal, and that was an own goal. But some good news for them over the last 24 hours. Kylian Mbappe's played a game. He played some youngsters, I think it was Paderborn, under 18s. Konstantin's nodding, because they're playing in that where their training camp is in that area. So they played against Paderborn youth team, and Mbappe scored twice. And I'm guessing that the French coaches said, please don't go anywhere near his nose injury. No clashes, no elbows out. But still, that's good news for France that Kylian Mbappe will be back. They have a lot of talent, but they need Mbappe. He's the X factor that will make a difference.
Funnily enough, they played Paderborn's reserve team, basically. They're under 21s who are currently playing 4th division football. And I mean, it comes full circle. I actually called a few of their games in the past. I mean, a while ago, but still, when I called, when I started as a commentator calling 4th division football in Germany. So it's kind of fun. Of course, players have changed. But yeah, they're playing against Paderborn's reserve team. Paderborn themselves are Bundesliga 2's 2nd division in Germany right now. But it's kind of fun. You have to see some of these video clips where I don't know, just Dembele or someone is just fooling some of these 4th division players.
What an opportunity for them, though, to come up against, like you say, Dembele and the likes of Mbappe as well. A fantastic opportunity. You're listening to Sports World with myself, Dalith Lloyd, on the BBC World Service, John Bennett and Konstantin Eckner with me for this first hour. And in Group E, after losing their opening game to Slovakia, Belgium got a much-needed win over Romania in the late game on Saturday.
And the referee, Simon Marciniak, he gets the match underway. Belgium against Romania. Across it goes to Lukaku. Then back to Tielemans! 1-0 Belgium! 1 minute 15 seconds on the clock. And Belgium finally joined the party. Yuri Tielemans scores for Belgium's first goal of the tournament. Ball all the way through. De Bruyne could be in. He is! Kevin De Bruyne! 2-0 Belgium. Kevin De Bruyne, the captain, 32 years old, nearly 33, scored his first goal of the tournament. Belgium second and doubled their lead. And there is the final whistle, and Belgium are off the mark in terms of goals and points and wins.
Euro 2024 live with Delith Lloyd.
So goals from midfielders Yuri Tielemans and Kevin De Bruyne. Romelu Lukaku, though, is still yet to open his account at the tournament after having a goal ruled out for a marginal offside. His third strike overturned by VAR. Lukaku, I mean, has he upset the VAR officials, John? It was so close, wasn't it, last night? It seemed so marginal. But obviously we have the technology now and they deemed it, no, it was offside.
Yeah, if any of our listeners haven't seen the image of how the goal was disallowed, have a look, because it's ridiculous. You need to look at it a couple of times before you realise which part of the body was offside. It's literally millimetres. But yeah, we had semi-automated offsides at this tournament. They have been brilliant, absolutely brilliant, quick, correct decisions. The only time it hasn't been quick was, again, I'm jinxing it, a game I was at when France played against the Netherlands, when it seemed to take a long time. I think there was a problem there in putting the lines down. But it has been really, really effective at this tournament. That is probably the only thing that's wrong with it, but it's more the rule that sometimes it does come down to millimetres, which is a shame. Football should never be about mathematics and those tight calls like that, but I guess that's the rule.
I wonder, Constantine, is this group the most exciting of them all, perhaps Group E? All four teams currently on 3 points going into the final round of games on Wednesday. Belgium against Ukraine to come and Slovakia v Romania. Is this group perhaps the most exciting?
I was actually rooting for Belgium to win, not because I dislike Romania or anything, but after Ukraine won, that their comeback win, I was just rooting for one group with each team having 3 points. Because I mean, I like some drama and some chaos, and also I mean, yes, John, I agree. Football shouldn't be about mathematics, but I actually like it when sometimes we have to actually calculate how much, who needs what, how did he actually, do they need another goal or whatever? I mean, something like that. I just like it. I'm always rooting that it comes down to crazy rules that are actually in place. You know, like the fourth or fifth tiebreaker. Then just because sometimes it's fun if it's not that contrived, if it's actually a little bit chaotic.
At a Cup of Nations, we had drawing of lots once for the for the right to go through to the next round. But it is the first time I was shocked by this. First time in the history of the European Championship that all four teams have been on 3 points going into the final game of the group. So yeah, it's remarkable. It's going to be so difficult to separate these teams.
Yeah, I think you're one of a few commentators saying you absolutely love it, because I know it's really a commentator's nightmare having to do the maths, as particularly with those two matches being played at the same time, and you'll probably be hearing a lot of the phrase "as it stands," as it happens when there's relegation battles or perhaps promotion battles in domestic football. Now, hosts Germany were the first team to qualify for the knockout stages. Their 2-0 win over Hungary on Wednesday guaranteed their place in the last 16 with a game to spare, which of course, as we've mentioned, is later on Sunday against Switzerland in Frankfurt. Well, despite already having their passage to the knockout stage, Germany coach Julian Nagelsmann has dismissed suggestions his side would prefer not to beat Switzerland on Sunday in order to avoid potentially facing German fans, currently, particularly in this last few days?
I've only been to Frankfurt a few times in my life, but it's always struck me as a football city. It's a real football city. They're mad about football here, and the place is buzzing. The city is buzzing at the moment. I don't think where I am at the stadium is the place to be. I think it's the city centre at the moment. They're going to start heading over.
You're too early. You've said this, John.
Yeah, I am too early. They are partying over there, and there is such belief. And I've seen pictures of the square where everyone's in their Germany kits. Yeah, it is. I've only heard stories. Konstantin would have known what it was like in 2006, but I've heard stories of the build-up of optimism and confidence as the tournament progressed. Again, it does feel like that win over Scotland, even though Scotland weren't the best, that was the perfect way to start this tournament. There is belief, there is confidence. I think the fans are realistic as well. They know that there are bigger challenges to come. But, yeah, I think that there's such excitement. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere at this stadium in a few hours' time.
Have they answered their critics so far, Konstantin? Obviously, like you've touched on, there was a little bit of negativity, wasn't there, coming in, particularly the last year or so. Things started to change a little bit in March, April time. But have they answered their critics so far, Germany?
Yes and no. To give a very decisive answer then. Because, I mean, yes, opposition, with all due respect to Scotland and Hungary, they are not world beaters, especially Scotland. I mean, it was pretty bad, actually, the performance they had in the opening game. I think the Scots actually know, especially after drawing with Switzerland. I think they realized how underwhelming they were against Germany. I think Hungary, yes, they beat Hungary, but there were also some moments, I mean, even 10 seconds into the game when Roland Schorlai, who plays for Freiburg in the Bundesliga, had a chance to score an early lead. So you still saw this team is a little bit vulnerable. I think that's kind of the common theme I have looking at almost all the teams right now. You see some of their strengths, but you also see they are vulnerable, which actually is great in a sense because everyone is beatable. That's what it means. And Germany, yes, they have answered some of their critics. I think especially offensively, Musiala and Wirtz and also Havertz and Gündoğan, who was under some fire going into this tournament because he's, of course, an aging player. I think they all have answered their critics. When it comes to Germany's defense, we will see. We will see. Hungary showed that there are ways to score against Germany.
And Switzerland, of course, the opponent tonight in Frankfurt, as we've been talking about. So Germany already through. And the 4 points that Switzerland already have as well should prove enough to see them qualify for the last 16 as well. Let's speak to former Switzerland defender Bruno Berner, who joins us on the line here on Sports World. Bruno, hello to you. How are you?
Hi. I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. We've got John Bennett and Konstantin Eckner with us as well. They're both out in Germany. So big match tonight in Frankfurt. Clearly Switzerland started with a 2-0 win over Hungary, didn't they, in their opening match? They were then held 1-1, weren't they, by a very spirited Scotland side.
Yes.
I mean, how much will the Swiss perhaps be looking at that second game as perhaps, a bit of a missed opportunity against the Scots there?
Yes, I'm not going to agree on that one. I think we didn't play as well as against Hungary. I think the first half was decent against Scotland, but we missed our opportunities or to play well in the second half. And obviously Scotland did much better than the first game against Germany. The energy they put on that night, was a different Scotland, and obviously Switzerland could not play their way. They want to play. I mean, Granit Xhaka, a key player for us, kept quiet of Scotland. So we tried to change that tonight against Germany. We have to. So we need players to step up. We need to play way above. We need to put in a very, very high performance if we want to get something out of the game tonight against Germany. And
I suppose equally, like you say, that the key players have to step up. Granit Xhaka, of course. I mean, he's had a great season, hasn't he? Winning the Bundesliga with Dortmund, and then Xherdan Shaqiri, still a big name player, scored a terrific goal against Scotland. How will Switzerland then be approaching this game? Because we've touched on with Konstantin and John that arguably Germany haven't maybe yet properly been tested, particularly the German defence.
Well, we're certainly going to test them tonight. So first things first, we really look forward to the game. It's just great to play the game against Germany, in Germany. So the players, the staff, everyone, the whole nation is so excited just to play that game, and that's very important. So we need to stay relaxed. That's very important too. And again, we have right now we have so many players playing abroad in major leagues, in very good leagues in European football. And I think it's time that Akanji, what so important defenders for us. And I think you just mentioned Shaqiri. I mean, what a goal he scored against Scotland, a one-touch finish. So we might need something special tonight against Germany from players like Shaqiri.
Yeah, Bruno, you mentioned it, that only 2 players right now on the Switzerland squad are playing at home. Yajari at Luzern and Renato Steffen at Lugano, and all the other players are playing abroad. And what I find fascinating, and maybe you can make sense of that, is looking at someone like Xherdan Shaqiri, of course, an older player, but also Breel Embolo, who's right now playing for Monaco. You always have the feeling that they are stepping up their game once they are taking on the Switzerland jersey.
Yeah, I agree on that one. And what we like to be not the favorites, and it looks like when we play against very, very strong opponents, which Germany certainly are, it feels like we are more confident in that role. If we have to make the game, if we have to dominate the game, we did do some progress over recent years, but still we like to be not the favorites and obviously hit teams in counterattack in quick transition game, which I still think is a strength of us. But you mentioned Embolo. He wasn't that fit at the beginning of the tournament. He looks sharper and better right now. It's the possibility that he's going to start tonight.
Bruno, it's John here. I know you know the Swiss head coach Murat Yakin very well. You used to play with him. He took a lot of criticism before the tournament. Then I think there was a lot of praise after the Hungary game. What's it been like after the Scotland game? Has it been back to the criticism?
Well,
what's it been like with the press and the pundits in the country?
Yeah, you see, even in Switzerland, football is crazy with all that opinions out there. I mean, I cannot imagine. You know, for us, I mean, Murat Yakin, I think every now and then he puts out a tactical masterclass. I mean, I know him as a player, I know him as a coach. And, you know, he always keeps his cards very tight to his chest. I don't know what he's going to pull out tonight. So he might going to surprise us with a different kind of system or lineup. But we look very much forward to that game. And I think more likely we are through already. It makes us a bit more relaxed and we're going to enjoy the game even more. But hey, look, we have absolutely nothing to lose, and Murat Yakin knows that. And in the past, he was able to do, you know, he was pulling out some tactical things. Everyone was surprised. So we, as a nation, we hope he's going to do that again tonight against Germany.
So Murat Yakin, of course, the tactical mastermind, at least on occasions, and the most important player and the key player in midfield is, of course, Granit Xhaka, Bruno. I read, and I think a lot of people read who are following Swiss football to an extent, that the two, Xhaka and Yakin, had some different opinions on things last year and going into this year. From what you know, has that been resolved? Are they on the same page now? Because I think that's also important for Switzerland's campaign.
I think they were always on the same page because, first of all, they're two brilliant personalities. They're two winners. I mean, Granit, what an outstanding season in Leverkusen. He was a mastermind and the key player for Leverkusen. So I mean, these guys are no schoolboys. I mean, these guys, I mean, they know what they're capable of. Both of them, they respect each other so much, and I think it was made up mainly from the media. And when you talk to players, talk to the Murat Yakin, I think they were always okay with each other. Having said that, I mean, Switzerland is not the most famous country of having conflicts openly, you know, and I like that in a football team sometimes there are conflicts, there are disagreements, because that is really what pushes you on to a possible further level. So it was maybe for the good if there were some, but when you will listen to the players quietly, you know, backstage, they were always okay with each other.
John, is there any concern over the pitch at all in Frankfurt? Because I know it was pretty cut up, wasn't it, when England took on Denmark on Thursday? It made a few news headlines. Any worries over the pitch?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Delith. I think that's going to be a factor in this game because England played here in the last match against Denmark, and we had BBC colleagues there who were there after that. We saw during the match that players slipped up. Carl Walker nearly got a serious injury when he slipped due to the turf moving. Then after the game, we saw pictures of them pulling up lots of the turf, and Julian Nagelsmann has been really critical of the pitch. This is what he said. He said, "I hope that it holds up, but I have little hope. The grass is simply not good. It's very greasy. It's very soft. It's like driving with summer tyres in the winter." And apparently he's saying it's because they had NFL games here. Constantine might know that. NFL games happened here, and after that the grass hasn't grown very well. So yeah, not good. We talked about the trains not being great for the organisers. This is another negative for the organisers, the pitch in this great stadium.
As a former player, Bruno, is that a huge concern? I mean, I know there's always the argument it's the exact same, isn't it, for both teams? But if you were a player about to, play tonight in Frankfurt, is that a worry? Will both sides be concerned about that going into the game?
Well, if it is a concern, you have to put it away because both teams have the same conditions. Obviously, it's annoying. You don't want to have that in a major tournament. You want to have good pitches because you want to play the best football possible. But that's the situation. You have to adapt quickly. You should not take too much from your mind because at the end, all you want to do is win on that conditions you have to face. So it's a mental thing to cope with.
Yeah, and just finally, Bruno, I know it always fascinates me when matches kick off at the same time. It's a bit like the final day of the season, isn't it, when there's so much to play for. Switzerland, we know, don't have to go for the win, but do you think they will play for the win?
Always. Always. It's difficult to play just for a point or not the losing games. I mean, we have a lot of winners in the team, led by Granit Xhaka, our captain. Of course, and we are some kind of that little brother who wants to beat the big brother. So, game on.
I like it, Bruno. Fighting talk. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Sports World. Very much appreciated. Thank you, former Switzerland defender Bruno Berner, speaking to us live on the BBC World Service. It's an interesting thought, that, isn't it? Because I wonder. We heard from Nagelsmann there as well before, didn't we, Constantine, saying it's very difficult to try and lose a game. Of course it is. They'll want to go out and win, you would imagine. He hasn't changed his team yet, though. Is he likely to bring other players in, do you think, Nagelsmann?
I don't think so, because right now it's still all about creating a certain kind of, or a certain degree of team chemistry. He might give Pascal Gross, who's playing for Brighton, of course, a chance, and that he might play instead of Robert Andrich. But even that, I mean, I believe Nagelsmann just wants to stick to the starting 11 he has used against Scotland and, of course, also Hungary, just into great chemistry and then going into the round of 16 and having a functional team and everyone knows their job. And even, I mean, sometimes Pascal Gross, for instance, he now knows his job being one of the backups, one of the players who probably comes in during a game, just like Leroy Sané will come in as a substitution player for Germany's attack. It's always good just these players are getting into a certain kind of mindset that they know what to expect, that they know what their role is during such a campaign, because as opposed to maybe a normal Premier League or Bundesliga or Champions League season even, it's a bit different because it's just about getting the best performance out of your team for 6-7 games. That's it. It's not really about like egos and internal politics and giving someone playing time just to satisfy someone's ego or maybe even the agent's ego. I mean, let's be honest, sometimes it is how it works in professional football. I don't think that Nagelsmann and any other national team head coach right now during such a tournament cares about any egos other than the nation's ego.
That's interesting. Egos. It's an interesting point, I must admit. Well, like Germany, Spain are through to the last 16 with a game to spare. They beat Italy 1-0 on Thursday to make it 2 wins from 2 to increase Spanish hopes that they could end their 12-year wait for a major trophy. Here's Spanish football expert Guillem Balaguer.
The best Spain I've seen since perhaps 2012, the European Championships finals against Italy, 4-0. It was that kind of superiority that you don't find these days in European football or in National League football, because everybody knows everything about everyone, and yet collectively Spain were superb. They recovered the ball very, very early. They attack in different ways, down the left flank with Nico Williams, right hand side with Lamine Yamal, through the middle, shooting outside the box. And yet the only goal came from Italy, an own goal. 20 shots on target. That is just not usual. And everybody individually was superb.
Yeah, Guillaume Balaguer knows a lot about football, knows a lot about Spanish football as well. So for him to say this is the best Spain team in over a decade, it's interesting to know. They didn't come into the tournament, did they, John? I mean, you and Constantine have touched on the fact that, you know, you've both been surprised by them. They didn't have a massive amount of expectations, did they, coming into the Euros, particularly from those outside of Spain? That's changed now massively, hasn't it? I mean, everyone across Europe, neutrals, whatever, will be looking at them and thinking they are arguably the team to beat.
Yeah, I don't think many people had huge faith outside Spain in the coaches come up through the ranks from youth levels in Spanish football, under 19, under 21, Luis de la Fuente, but they do look sensational. I saw Sid Lowe in The Guardian, another Spanish football expert, saying it's a twist on tiki-taka. It's more dynamic, it's more exciting, it feels like a young and fresh team. I mean, I was at the game, the Spain-Italy game, and Di Lorenzo, the poor fullback for Italy, he will still be having nightmares about facing Nico Williams, who was man of the match. It was just a sensational. Every time he got the ball, I've seen Nico Williams a lot on TV, but this is the first time I've seen him live in a stadium. And it takes a lot, after we've all watched a lot of football, to be genuinely astonished by a player. But I could not believe how good he was, how quick he was, how much skill he had. It looked like he was playing at a different level from everyone else. Then on the other wing, you've got Lamine Yamal, who didn't have his best game, actually, but we know he's capable of brilliance. I think he celebrates his 17th birthday the day before the final. So you could see that being an amazing story. The one problem, maybe, Constantine, is they're not clinical enough, and Guillaume mentioned it there. It was just one goal and it was an own goal. Morata has been criticised. He was clinical in the first game, wasn't in the second game. Maybe that will let them down. Maybe that will be their undoing. They're not taking the chances.
Yeah, I think if there's something stopping Spain from just advancing and even maybe beating Germany, I mean, if they actually meet in the quarterfinals, as it looks like it right now, we will see. Still, the schedule has to be made after the group stage. But if they are advancing and progressing, what might stop them is actually that Morata or even the backup strikers like Oyarzabal, at that level, they might not be the most clinical strikers. I mean, everyone who has followed Spanish football, even like followed Morata throughout his career, knows that he's a great football player, great target player, someone who can play all these layoff passes. As a goal scorer, he's not really top class. And that's why actually Nico Williams or Lamine Yamal or Dani Olmo, who's kind of the backup winger right now, who's played tremendously in recent times for RB Leipzig, that these players actually have to be the goal scorer and they have to provide the deciding goals. But what I just think in general, looking at that Spanish team right now, is what really is promising. If you're a Spain fan, then it's just that attacking front combined with Fabian Ruiz and of course also Pedri and the backups, it's just working so well. And that's it's the closest thing to actually like a top tier Champions League team you can find right now at this tournament.
Yeah, I was going to mention the midfield. We have to, yeah, because I think Lamine Yamal and Williams, they've taken a lot of the praise. But that midfield, Rodri, one of the best players in the tournament, Pedri, we think he's been around forever. He's only 21, sensational. And Fabian Ruiz, I think, is... you talked to a lot of the Spanish journalists, that he's the player that they've really enjoyed watching at this tournament. They feel that he's gone up to a different level. He was in the pre-match press conference before the game against Italy, which I know he's played in Italy, used to play for Napoli, but also said to me that he's the guy they all want to talk to at the moment. They want to hear how he's improved. So, yeah, it's not just going forward they've been brilliant, but in midfield. That's the one problem, though, isn't it, Delith? The quarter-final, if all goes
as we think it will.
Spain, Germany. But that should be the final, really, but by rights, the way they're both playing.
I think at one point, it's also sometimes fascinating watching international tournaments. Look at Cucurella. All right. Of course, he played great for Brighton. Then the move in 2022 to Chelsea, and we know how he's done so far playing for Chelsea. It's all right, but it's not really a 60 million worth move, to be honest. But look, watching him playing for Spain in a more restricted role, I mean, he doesn't have to do much in terms of attacking plays. He can focus on more defensive protection and like just advancing possession. I think he plays tremendously. And watching him just at this tournament, you think, right, all right, that's one of the best left backs you can find in Europe. So that's sometimes so fascinating during these tournaments that actually players can show their better side or maybe the other face in a sense.
He's the cult hero, Delith, as well, with the Spain fans. I was on a train with some Spain fans and I said, who's the key player? And they said, Marc Cucurella. And I kind of laughed. I feel bad. I feel bad. They said, no, we're being serious. I think they misunderstood. I think they thought I asked who's the most improved player. And then I watched the game and he had his own little fan club, Cucurella. Every time he got the ball, there were huge cheers. And he's had two really, really good games. He's been one of the players of the tournament, Cucurella at left back. We're talking Spain up so much here that they're going to hit a wall at some stage, probably in that quarter-final against Germany.
Gosh, that's a mouth-watering prospect if that does end up happening. We've got to touch on Portugal, haven't we, as well? They're the only team, apart from Spain and Germany, to have booked their place in the last 16 as well. 6 points from 6. They, of course, won the tournament in 2016. What are we thinking of Portugal so far, Konstantin? You know, it's been pretty interesting, hasn't it?
Yes, especially because so much usually, in terms of media coverage and public perception, revolves around Cristiano Ronaldo. However, watching these games, yes, he played pretty well against Turkey, but you could see, all right, if it's just Ronaldo, that it's not working anymore. I mean, these days are in a way over because you can see that others are stepping up, and unsurprisingly, someone like Rafael Leao or Bernardo Silva, I mean, we know what they are capable of. I mean, Milan is pretty much depending on Leao, offensively at least, that he does all the magic. So, I mean, no Milan fan is probably surprised, and no City fan is surprised how great actually Bernardo Silva is, at Vitinha in midfield, and Bruno Fernandes as the number 10. So there are just a number of players that have been playing so well. And in terms of possession, they're also relying on Joao Cancelo, and he has played pretty well. But yes, pretty good performances. Two now. But also, I think they still need to be tested, Portugal, because Turkey yesterday wasn't really a test. Let's be honest. I mean, Turkey, they again were hurt by some individual mistakes, especially in defense. And just to add one more point, Pepe is now 41. And I mean,
incredible,
it's just,
isn't it?
I think he's an inspiration to everyone who's getting older and then maybe turning 40. Just watch what Pepe does and how he's still performing. Also, I'm not sure if he would score, actually, he would become the oldest goal scorer at the Euros tournament. And I don't know if Cristiano Ronaldo would like that fact.
I think Cristiano Ronaldo would love that stat as well. Portugal, they guaranteed top spot in Group F with a 3-0 win over Turkey in Dortmund on Saturday. John, does anyone have a better squad than them? I mean, their strength in depth in their squad, is it not the best in the tournament?
Yeah, it's remarkable when you saw pictures yesterday of the subs who were warming up and you're thinking, wow, this squad is so deep. I think they were my 3 at the start of the tournament. If you just looked at it on paper, Portugal, France, and dare I say England on paper having the really good squads at this tournament. But then you look at the England squad and you think they've got no left back. They haven't got their first choice centre back. There are problems there. So yeah, I think Portugal have to be up there as one of the top 3 squads on paper at this tournament. It's whether they can get it right. I think it's 11 or 12 games unbeaten now competitively since Roberto Martinez, the head coach, took over.
Impressive.
But Konstantin's right. They need a test. We need to see what it's like when they really get a test.
Yeah, I think I heard the violins there playing when you were talking about England missing a couple of key players, John. And let's move on to them because we may only be 10 days in, but all 24 nations have played twice. Which country then has perhaps, or which player has been the biggest disappointment? Now, it might be a surprise to mention England because, as I touched on before, we talked about them as heavy favourites a week ago. They're top of their group on 4 points as well, let's not forget. But their performance against Denmark in their 1-1 draw was described as very poor and concerning by their former captain Alan Shearer. And in the last few minutes, the current England captain Harry Kane has been speaking to the media.
Before the tournament, if you would have said, where we are now, you'd pretty much be qualified after 2 games, we would have took it for sure. But I think, look, we can be honest with ourselves that we haven't played the way we've wanted to play. I think the good sign is that we've still picked up results whilst doing that. But yeah, I think Tuesday is important just for the feeling of the group. Of course, we want to finish top as well and just kind of take that momentum into the knockout stages. So yeah, and just for more all round, just to have a better feeling coming off the pitch and hopefully take that for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, Harry Kane, I think, wanting the whole England team to stay calm as well ahead of their next game. The England media, though, John, I mean, here, since I've been back, they've absolutely slated England's performance against Denmark. I mean, it was absolutely incredible, really, that some of the things they were talking about. The main key thing, I think, was that a lot of people are saying they keep going ahead in matches, then sitting back, inviting the pressure on them. I just wonder what it's been like in Germany, how the media there are perhaps viewing England.
Well, I think they're finding it quite funny that everyone talked up England before the tournament and now they really have been poor, haven't they? But there seems to be a disconnect between what we think, what the media thinks, what the fans think and what the players think. They seem surprised that we're being critical in a way of their performances. Some of the interviews after the game, that they're pleased to get through and they've got 4 points, but it's been so poor. And when they come up against a better team, there's no way that they're going to be able to compete the way they're playing. It's because they've got such great players like Foden, like Bellingham, like Kane, who have been the massive stars of this season in European club football, but we're seeing nowhere near their potential. So it's a big game on Tuesday. It's not just about the result, it's about the performance. They have to start delivering now.
It's very true that, isn't it, John? I mean, a lot of pressure on England. Yes, they're likely to go through regardless, but they need to up their performance, don't they, on Tuesday against Slovenia? Yeah,
they do. It has to improve. And I wonder what changes will be made. That midfield position is where I think Gareth Southgate has confused a lot of people. He said the quote which has upset people is he said that we haven't been able to find a replacement for Calvin Phillips, who hasn't retired. Calvin Phillips is still there. He's just had a really, really bad season and wasn't brought into the squad. I'd love to see one of the young players like Adam Wharton being given a go. I think he was sensational. Since Oliver Glasner took over at Crystal Palace, he's been sensational. He's the type of player that really English football has lacked over the last decade or so. So I would love, Constantine, to see Adam Wharton being given a go.
But just asking a naive question, all right? Because when I saw the quote about Calvin Phillips, of course, I mean, we know he didn't really play for Villa. And yeah, of course, I get it why he wasn't picked for that tournament. Because, I mean, I looked at actually his match stats and he so often just sat on the bench throughout the season that you can, of course, figure out why he wasn't selected, all things considered. But wasn't it more some sort of criticism towards Declan Rice, actually? Because looking at the player profile, I see Phillips and Rice more in the same kind of category, and the Trent Alexander-Arnold more in the bit more creative, possession, skilled player, as opposed to maybe Declan Rice being more of the not holding midfielder, but like the anchor midfielder. So I don't know, because then I saw all the talks about, all right, maybe he drops Trent Alexander-Arnold or moves Trent Alexander-Arnold to the right-hand side and lets him play as a wing-back or something like that.
Yeah, I wonder if Declan Rice, why he's not trusted more to play in that sixth role. I mean, with Arsenal, he has been more attacking, hasn't he, this season? Is he saying to Gareth Southgate, I want to be more of an attacking player, I don't want to be the one-sitter? But a lot of people have said, why not Rice, Bellingham and then Foden in the number 10? Why not try that to get Foden in the number 10 position, bring Bellingham slightly further back where he used to play? But of course, this season for Real Madrid, he's been absolutely sensational in the number 10 position. But it's almost as if he's trying to fit players in at the moment rather than picking what would be the best team.
You touched on egos, didn't you, before as well? And you wonder how much that comes into play as well. You know, I don't know anything specifically whether, you know, Bellingham's got an ego or whatever, but, you know, his presence on the pitch is so huge. You wonder whether there's no way Southgate can feel he can drop him.
But he was poor, wasn't he, Constantine, Jude Bellingham? In the second game, he really had a poor game.
I actually think he ran out of gas also in the later stages of the club season. I mean, yes, Real Madrid, they won the Champions League, but the last few games weren't Bellingham's best. And just to add maybe one point, I mean, just historically speaking, I remember sometimes when the England coach tried to also fit in Gerrard and Lampard and all these other players, and it didn't really work. Although, I mean, they tried to have the best players on the field.
Yeah, they certainly did. Quick prediction tonight, Constantine, Germany, Switzerland. What are you going for?
2-1.
2-1 to Germany, of course.
Yes.
John, I know we'll touch on the game a little bit later as well in Frankfurt. Thank you both for being with me on the first hour of Sports World. Constantine and John, I'll speak to you later. Constantine, I'll speak to you soon. But bye for now. Auf Wiedersehen for now. Konstantin Eckner, German sports broadcaster and journalist, joining us on the first hour of Sports World. And John Bennett, I'll speak to you a little bit later as well as we preview again Switzerland against Germany in Frankfurt. Do stay tuned. There's plenty more to come on Sports World.
I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Hello. Thousands of French women are demonstrating against the far-right National Rally in Paris and other cities. The party is leading in opinion polls for the first round of parliamentary elections in a week's time, but appears unlikely to win a majority. Those protesting fear the National Rally could erode rights for women. Danny Eberhardt reports.
Supporters of more than 200 women's organisations have taken to the streets in the sunshine to warn about what they see as the dark cloud of the far right. The demonstrators fear that the National Rally, if it forms the next government, will bring with it a climate of hate that will affect women from groups including immigrants and racial and sexual minorities. But there are concerns too about the sincerity of the party's commitments on issues like equal pay and abortion. The National Rally, which is led by a woman, Marine Le Pen, rejects claims that it threatens women's rights. It cites, for example, promises to strengthen penalties for gender-based violence. One study indicated that more women than men voted for it during recent European parliamentary elections.
Russia has vowed to respond after the death of 5 people and the wounding of more than 120 in a Ukrainian missile attack on occupied Crimea. Russian-installed authorities said 3 of the dead were children and that the casualties were caused by missile fragments from American-made long-range ATACMS falling on a beach just north of Sevastopol port. Russian TV footage showed people running from a beach and others being carried off on sun loungers. Kenya's president says he will hold talks with young protesters opposed to the government's plans to hike taxes. William Ruto said the talks are aimed at addressing their concerns about the government's economic policies. From Nairobi, Richard Kagoe reports.
President Ruto broke his silence over the ongoing protest at a church service in central Kenya. Security was tight at the venue after young protesters threatened to storm churches across the country for failing to declare their stand on the controversial finance bill. Mr. Ruto commended the protesters for marching peacefully and demanding to be heard. The protesters have rejected plans to increase taxes, saying it will make life more expensive in a country where citizens are struggling to make ends meet. 2 people died and dozens were injured during nationwide protests on Thursday.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has sought to defuse a row with America over what he's described as delays in US weapons shipments. US officials have expressed disappointment and bewilderment after Mr. Netanyahu accused Washington of withholding weapons and ammunition for about 4 months. But on Sunday, Mr. Netanyahu told his cabinet that the issue would be resolved, as he put it, in the near future. This comes as the Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, flew to Washington to discuss the next phase of the war against Hamas. BBC News. All flights have been cancelled from 2 terminals at Manchester Airport in northern England because of an earlier power cut. Normal operations are only expected to resume on Monday. There have also been some flight delays from the 3rd terminal. Britain's 3rd busiest airport said the cut was caused by a power spike that damaged key equipment. The Grand Duke of Luxembourg is to step back from his duties and hand over powers to his son in October. However, Grand Duke Henri will retain his title. Mr. Pico reports.
When a crown passes on to a new generation, it normally happens through death or abdication, but not so in Luxembourg. The tiny but rich European country has its own way of doing things. There, the Grand Duke appoints a lieutenant représentant, in effect a regent who takes over the duties of the head of state. Prince Guillaume was always expected to get the title, but the timing was a surprise. The Grand Duke is only 69 and in good health, despite an angioplasty more than 10 years ago. Like his father before him, he's likely to remain the formal head of state for some years before handing over the throne and the Grand Ducal title to his son.
8 people in central China have been killed after heavy rain caused part of a mountainside to give way, burying their homes. State media said the landslide happened early on Sunday, covering part of a village in Henan province. More heavy rain is expected this week. China has been dealing with extreme weather for the last few months. Switzerland says ice loss on its glaciers caused by climate change has been less severe this year than of late. Matthias Huss, head of the Swiss Glaciological Survey Network, said the reason was this year's greater snowfall measured on 14 glaciers. Mr. Huss hoped a cool summer might help further, but warned there probably wouldn't be actual ice gain this year. BBC News.
On radio, online and on mobile. This is Sports World on the BBC World Service.
You are indeed listening to Sports World with me, Dalith Lloyd. Always great to have you wherever you're listening around the world. In an hour from now, we'll take a special look back at Greece's historic Euro 2004 triumph in Portugal. But now we're going to concentrate on one of the biggest stars of this European Championship. France captain Kylian Mbappe is hoping to lead his nation to a title they last won in the year 2000 and is currently recovering from a broken nose suffered in the opening game against Austria. In the first part of a special documentary looking into the life and career of a footballing icon, Steve Crossman and Julien Laurens took a look at Mbappe's upbringing, discovering what helped him take him from the streets of Paris to World Cup winner.
Kylian Mbappe is a phenomenon.
Ball played over the top for Monaco. Oh, Mbappe's in! Mbappe scores!
You know instantly you're seeing something extraordinary.
When I saw him the first time play, I said, we have Pelé here.
In 2018, at just 19 years old, he announced himself on the biggest stage in world football.
Giroud with support on the outside from Mbappe at pace! It's a fourth for France! It's a second for Mbappe! He has been unstoppable this afternoon!
Since that day, he's gone on to win multiple league titles and cups, starring for France with that unforgettable World Cup final hat-trick in Qatar. Off the pitch, Mbappe has also become one of the most powerful footballers there has ever been, personifying the recent shift in power, from club to player.
Kylian Mbappe, when he wants to go to see the President of France, he can go and see the President of France.
Now, in 2024, with his career in Paris seemingly drawing to a close and the Euros on the horizon, Julien Laurens and I will tell his story.
The question is always what? What makes Kylian Mbappe so special?
And so, with the help of his teammates...
Who's that little kid? It's special, isn't he?
His coaches...
I think some people are born leaders.
And some experts of the game...
He would already be considered one of the greats of our game in the total history.
We'll discover just how this humble kid from Paris became one of the most powerful sportsmen in the world. And ask, how far can he go?
I'm Kylian. I know what I can do, who I can be.
I'm Julien Laurens.
And I'm Steve Crossman. This is Sporting Giants, Kylian Mbappe. Episode 1, The Boy from Bondy.
You might remember, back in 2020, a hashtag went viral and was all over the internet. Project Mbappe.
First session, yeah? Project Mbappe. I'm going to pass you the ball.
Project Mbappe. Jaden, what I want you to do is dribble through these cones.
Proyecto Mbappe.
Of course, like most things on the internet, it was mostly tongue-in-cheek. The chances of these kids actually making it are next to zero, as you can imagine. But there is a real story behind this online craze.
The real Project Mbappé began in a place called Bondy, a suburb of northeastern Paris. These areas are known as the banlieue.
OK, Jules, before we go to Bondy itself then, I think it'd be cool to explain to the listeners what the banlieue actually are.
It's quite simple, Steve. Imagine Paris as in the city centre and then the ring road, the periphery that you have all around. The banlieue is everything beyond the periphery. And basically, after the Second World War, when France and Paris especially was rebuilt in a way, a big wave of immigration we had, you need to find places to put all those people, especially in the capital. So they built all those tower blocks, all those council estates to put kind of all our families, all our grandparents and great-grandparents in there. Great. The problem is you also put people there with not much money, with culture that sometimes opposed each other. And the relationship that those council estates and those banlieues could have with the rest of the country, they would be made scapegoats when something was going wrong. Oh, it's always the fault of the banlieue. It's always because of the banlieue. It's always because of the immigration within the banlieue or people who came from the banlieue. But football has been the thing, really, that the banlieue have done well, because football is king in the banlieue.
And you're speaking from personal experience as well here. And I think people will be fascinated by this, the environment that built the bizarre, entertaining, charismatic, intelligent character that is Julien Laurent.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. I mean, Kylian is north of Paris. I'm east of Paris. So all those banlieues have numbers because they are from a department, and all the departments in France have a number. I'm 94, he's 93. There's a bit of a rivalry between, although I played football in the 93 as well. So I used to play against Bondy regularly, against Sarcelles, where Riyad Mahrez is from, for example, not far from Bondy. Football is all you do. Age doesn't matter, level doesn't matter so much, but it's tough and you have to be strong. You have to stand up for yourself to start with, so it's character building. You have to show your talent for the ones who have some, and also you improve your level, which is the most important. And I think when you play for a club as well, or when you go to an academy, then it's all almost based on what you learn in the street playing football.
I've been to Sarcelles, where Riyad Mahrez is from, and it's quite a bit of it is quite a run-down area. It's a little bit different to where Kylian Mbappé grew up, which is obviously where we've got to start. So let's go to Bondy. Jules jumped off the Eurostar, picked up a hire car, and headed to Mbappe's hometown.
So we're here in Bondy now, and you arrive here, which is a mix of council estates and tower blocks. And this is where Kylian grew up and lived for most of his life. I'm here now, just in front of the door where he used to come in, press the door buzzer for his mum or dad or brother to open him the door, and then climb up the stairs to go home. The kitchen window gives on the street, and from the kitchen window and the living room window, you could see across with the trees and the oak trees that are in the way, but you can still see the Stade Léo Lagrange, where obviously he played from the age of 5 to until he was 15, where his dad coached, where his uncle played, his brother plays. The whole Mbappé family really belong here. Merci beaucoup.
Mbappe's father, Wilfried, emigrated to France from Cameroon, where he met Kylian's mother, Faiza, a French-Algerian professional handball player who was born in Bondy. They made a home for their 3 football-obsessed sons, Kylian, Ethan and Giresse. This story is not unique. Former Spurs player Sébastien Bassong grew up in a banlieue, just a stone's throw from Bondy. He talks about the importance of football in these communities.
People who migrated here years and years and years ago were coming from South Country, Africa mostly. They were countries of football. So that was the only way for them and for us to exist a little bit.
Despite the challenging conditions for lots of immigrant families, the banlieue, and specifically the banlieue in Paris, are a hotbed of footballing talent.
There's 3 ways to make it in the banlieue. Street, wrong, the bad one, music or football.
As John Bennett reported in the BBC World Service documentary, Paris, Football's Greatest Talent Factory, the city is one of, if not the best, in the world for nurturing footballers. 30 players at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar were born in the Paris area. Compare that to 12 from Sao Paulo, just 8 from Greater London.
There's a certain mindset which lives in the air that's very contagious. You know the 10,000 hours rules. To become an expert at something, you got to practice that art for 10,000 hours minimum. But when they get you into a club, you got structure football, you start playing, okay, it works. But you don't realize that you've practiced for so many hours before just by playing on the street.
And it wasn't just those hours of kicking a ball against a wall that helped Bassong achieve his dreams. It was also that competitive culture specific to the banlieue.
So in my neighborhood, to make yourself a name or respected is difficult. You got a bigger brother, they've done stuff already, so you're the little one. As soon as you start playing football, people start seeing you differently because you're going to start helping them winning games, even internal games, you know, for the name, the ego. And that makes you feel different.
Another reason for the Paris banlieue's success in nurturing footballers like Kylian is the local government policy to build football facilities in every Paris suburb and make them accessible.
When I was in Bondy, it was just a normal Wednesday afternoon. In France, primary schools close at 12 on a Wednesday. So Wednesday afternoon is for sporting activities, usually, or all sorts of activities, especially football. So everybody comes and train on a Wednesday afternoon. And there was a real buzz about it in the place. There were hundreds of kids who all received great high level of coaching, of course. But also Bondy is a place where scouts very regularly go, agents as well, to just look out for players.
Kylian had all of this, quite literally on his doorstep. Even before he was old enough to play for them, he already had a deep relationship with the club. That's because his father, Wilfred, was a coach there.
Now we're doing the little journey. It's a really short journey that Kylian would have done so many times in his life, from the family flats on Allée des Lilas, just across the road, so crossing this road where the cars are parked when you live on the estate, to go to the Léo Lagrange Stadium. The Bondy under 10 are currently training on that 4G pitch. You see a lot of PSG shirts, of course. One has Achraf Hakimi in the back. There's a few Kylian Mbappé shirts, of course. And they're doing simple drills. And this is where Project Mbappé really started 20 years ago, really. And a lot of those boys and coaches will hope that in the current squads of various ages is maybe the next Kylian Mbappé. Tony Riccardi was one of Mbappe's first coaches at AS Bondy and a close friend of the family.
Kylian had...
Of course, Kylian was obsessed with football from the start. We saw that it was his passion, and you could tell because he came here and dropped his bag almost every day after school when his dad was coaching. And at weekend games, we saw him around the stadium. When Wilfred was coaching, he'd come in and sit in a corner. Very quickly, he was immersed in this football culture, this locker room culture, this club culture.
Ryan Vianga was Kylian's friend and teammate at AS Bondy. They grew up together playing in the same team.
Son talent, je pense que même...
His talent? Well, I think even today his talent knows no bounds. Kylian was already one step ahead of many other players at AS Bondy.
De l'AS Bondy, il avait un temps d'avance sur son âge.
He was advanced for his age group and wanted to play with the best. He never set himself any limits.
En fait, il ne se donne pas de limites.
Vianga remembers Kylian idolising Madrid's number 7 at the time.
Sa chambre, on l'a tous vu, sa chambre.
We've all seen photos of his bedroom. He's a big fan of Cristiano Ronaldo.
Grand fan de Cristiano Ronaldo.
When I was in Bondy, I heard some great stories about Kylian. Tony Riccardi, his first coach, told me, for example, that Kylian learned La Marseillaise, the French national anthem, as a young kid and would sing it to practice because he said that obviously he would need it one day when he will be playing for the national team. Another good story I heard, a few times actually, was about one of Kylian's other big idols, Zinedine Zidane. Kylian one day, maybe like he was 8 or 9, went to the hairdressers, to the barbers, and said to the guy if he could have Zidane's haircut, not realizing that it was not actually a haircut, it was Zidane's ball patch, and everybody laughed at the hairdresser. Clearly, he was a character. It wasn't just haircuts that Mbappé would copy either. Ryan Vianga remembers Kylian's imitating his football idols on the pitch too.
Tout le temps, à chaque entraînement, il y avait une.
Every time, at every training session, he had a new way of doing things. So at each training session, he'd be working on anything he hadn't fully mastered. I'll give you an example. If it was free kicks, we'd be at training. And during the drinks break, he'd practice free kicks past the mannequins. We carried the mannequins because he was too small. But once he saw something on TV, he'd try to replicate it at training, and he'd master it. It was great.
Tony Riccardi, Kylian's first coach, also remembers his ability to learn things quickly.
Ouais, je décris sa personnalité comme une éponge. C'est vrai, c'est quelqu'un.
I'd describe his personality like a sponge.
J'abuse. Après, je suis pas psychologue.
I'm not a psychologist, but he had aspects of genius, like someone who's highly developed, with the abilities to understand very quickly, who's able to put what you ask into practice very quickly, able to copy something he's seen very quickly. It's the sign of a great champion.
De regarder, et c'est la marque des grands champions.
Another person Kylian idolized and learned a lot from at this time was his adopted brother, Giresse. Giresse Kambwe-Koko came to France from Congo when he was 6 years old and was taken in and adopted by Faiza and Wilfried Mbappé. He was 10 years older than Kylian, but like his brothers, also started football and played for Bondy. He went on then to be selected at the Clairefontaine Academy and made his professional debut for Rennes in Ligue 1 when Kylian was just 8 years old. So he was a big, big influence for him.
Puis après, effectivement, Faiza et Wilfried.
Faiza and Wilfried looked after him, so he must have been a role model for Kylian. It allowed him to understand, to keep seeing and learning things.
Le cerveau d'un enfant, c'est une éponge.
So being able to spend time with Giresse, to be in the dressing rooms with him, it must have given him a huge quantity of information, visualizing, imitating.
D'être dans le mimétisme et